Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 303 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host. He is Adnan Ikic, at Say Which Way. Adnan, welcome back. How are you doing on this fine Wednesday?
Uh, Good. A little nervous because the Brave season may end tonight. Probably will end tonight, but we'll keep tabs of that during the show for sure.
Yeah, we'll have live look in at Adnan as the innings pass to see if we can guess what's happening in the Braves game. And we also have with us a little bit of a minor scheduling change, but great guest for you guys, of course. It is friend of the show and Falcoholic compatriot, Aaron Freeman at Locked On Falcons. Aaron, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm just worried about Adnan. If we see him pacing back and forth on camera, that means things are not going well for the Braves. So we'll see what's up with that.
Yeah,
The facial expressions will give it away.
yeah. I mean, it's as if like watching the Atlanta Falcons wasn't stressful enough. Adnan's also watching the Atlanta Braves. So definitely thoughts, T's and P's with Adnan tonight with his sports fandom. But yeah, guys, the Falcons are back to 2-2. They've got an excellent chance here on Thursday Night Football to take control of the NFC South with a win over the Bucs. They just got to win. That's easy, right? Just got to beat the Bucs in your home stadium on Thursday night at home. We know the stats aren't kind to Thursday night road teams. The Falcons should have the advantage there. The Bucs are reeling with injuries. The Falcons are getting some guys back, although they are going to be missing Troy Anderson. But, in some ways, this game looks like we should be thinking that the Falcons will win. In other ways, it looks like the Bucs are the better football team through 4 weeks. So a lot to get to tonight, a lot to discuss. We're going to start off with the injury report and then get into this game. But before we do, want to bring you guys a real quick word from our sponsor, as always, BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. This is a tight game right now. I believe the spread is Falcons at just 1.5-point home favorites, which, for those that know what that means, the Falcons would be underdogs in a neutral setting. However, at home, they are slightly favored. That's one of the thinnest lines you will ever see. So definitely, I just refuse to ever bet on Thursday games. I think they're like the weirdest, most random outcomes. So I just swear them off. But if you want to, I guess go for it. But not my recommendation. But no matter what you want to bet on, BetOnline's got every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. And if you think you know your stuff, you can get in on BetOnline's new $200,000 mega contest and you pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of that $200,000 grand prize. And when the game's over, you can head on over to BetOnline's online casino. They've got blackjack, poker, over 150 slots games. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website today, betonline.ag, to get in on the action. Just make sure to sign up using our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, so a lot to get to tonight. Figured we'd start off with the injury report. Short week. You wonder if there would be a chance that Anderson could have played on a full week of practice, because today would have been the first day of practice on a regular week. So, it seems like it's a pain management thing for Anderson. He's hurting pretty good. Probably wise to hold him out of this Thursday night game. He's the only guy out for the Falcons at this stage. Jason McClellan was a late addition today with an illness. He is questionable, but Jason McClellan has not taken a carry yet. So, that's probably on the lower end of impact in terms of the spectrum there. But Bijan Robinson, Ray McLeod, and Caleb McGarry all upgraded to full participants on Wednesday, and none of them carry a game status, which means Caleb McGarry is going to be back for Thursday Night Football way earlier. I mean, I expected he'd at least miss this week. But I'll go to our guest, Aaron Freeman here. Aaron, what do you think about Caleb McGarry back so soon?
Yeah, I was like you. I was like, yeah, he wasn't going to play last week. He's not going to play on a short week. And so we'll get him back for Carolina, and sounds like we're going to get him back for Tampa Bay. So I think that's a big boost to this offensive line. I think Storm Norton, holds the fort well, but the offense isn't quite the same without Caleb McGarry, especially when it comes to the run game. So I think that's going to be a huge boost for this Falcons team going into this Bucs game, as we were discussing before we started recording. You don't want to run into the teeth of that Bucs defense where big Vita Vea, number 50, is hanging out, where he has basically a black hole to run into. And so this outside zone run scheme doesn't quite work without Caleb McGarry doing his thing on the outside. So if he comes back, I do think the Falcons will have a much better chance of being able to get their ground game going up against this Bucs front. So this is, to me, the biggest impact when it comes to this injury, coming back from this injury.
Yeah, big surprise to me also. Adnan, what do you think about the state of this Falcons team going into this very, very important clash with the Bucs on Thursday Night Football?
I mean, injury-wise, it's about as well as you can expect it to be 4 weeks into the season, right? Like, every team is hurting. You're expecting there to be injuries, but obviously the Falcons are without Drew Dahlman. But Caleb McGarry, I shout out to him. A sprained MCL, that hurts like hell. If anyone's ever sprained their MCL like that, it hurts like a bitch. And Caleb McGarry is one tough dude to be coming back from it after missing just one game, because we thought the worst, right, after that Kansas City game. I was half expecting McGarry to also be put on short-term IR, just like Drew Dahlman. But, yeah, it's bad luck that this is a Thursday game and not a Sunday game, because one Sunday game it would have given McGarry even a few more days to heal up. But also, Troy Anderson seems like the good news. Raheem Morris says that he's day to day, even though he is hurting pretty good. So, down Troy Anderson, you're down Nate Landman as well. So it's going to be up to J.D. Bertrand to hold down the fort the way that Storm Norton was holding down the fort at right tackle. But yeah, it's good, especially when you look over at the Bucs injury report. Like, they're missing some key contributors, starting with Antoine Winfield. So I'm pretty happy. I'm very happy that we're getting McGarry back, and I'm very happy with what the injury report looks like right now. Although when he comes back, we have to we need a commitment, a promise that Troy Anderson's days on special teams are done.
Yeah, no, we can't have him playing special teams anymore. That, I feel like they just forgot he was there. Just like, oh, Troy's played special teams. Like, oh yeah, probably should not be having your starting linebacker and NFC Defensive Player of the Week, Troy Anderson, playing special teams anymore. I think he's officially graduated from those responsibilities. I get that he's a good special teams player, but yeah, you can't do that when you're you can't do that when you're this thin at linebacker. But that means we're going to get JD Bertrand out there. So and yet, kind of on this topic, we got Mikey G with the $2. Thanks, Mikey. He says, do we think, speaking of guys getting playing time, rookies, do we think that Rook gets playing time before week 8? Yes, I think Rook will get playing time week 6, to be honest with you. I don't know if it'll be this week just because of the short week, but I think Kentavious Street's days in the starting/rotational lineup might be almost over, given his recent play. But yeah, what do you got? Yeah, Aaron, what do you think? Do you think we see Rook soon at this point?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think we'll see him by week 18. I don't know if we'll see him by week 8. Is basically at this point in time. So we'll see on that front.
Yeah. What do you think, Adnan? When do we see Rook?
I hope so. I hope it's soon.
Yeah.
It's high second round pick. It's not like the interior of the defensive line has been, breaking through and setting the world on fire. If they were, I'd be like, okay, keep him out, whatever. But I mean, they need the help too. Yeah,
they do. So, I think we got to get more from the whole entire interior defensive line. But yeah, I mean, at a certain point, it's such a, you're not getting anything from Kentavious Street, and it's a PR nightmare not having any rookies play. So, even just for PR reasons, we should be seeing Rook at some point. I mean, I think for football reasons too. So it's one of those things where the two dovetail. Yeah, they dovetail nicely.
Make him active.
Yeah, you don't have to give him snaps if you don't want. Just at least make him active. I mean,
But you put him on special teams.
There you go. Yeah, because somebody, if Anderson can't do it, we got to have somebody else in there, right? We just got to swap him out. So, yeah.
Bertrand's going to be the first rookie to start the season at any point. So,
yeah.
whoever made that bet, you're making some money, because I'm sure there were great odds on that one.
I'm sure there were great odds if you could find them. So yeah, good stuff there. And Noah C adds, glad to see the Matt Bryant torch has been passed on to Younghoe Koo. Yeah, I mean, wonderful performance from Younghoe Koo. I know Adnan and I talked about it after the game some. But yeah, Aaron, before we move on to this Bucs game,
Kevin, why didn't you read the other part of that chat?
I did. I answered it in the chat. Yeah, he asked for like emoji responses, but yeah, it was a funny question. Definitely read the chat. But yeah, Aaron, what do you think about Younghoe Koo's heroics?
Yeah, I think the same thing I've thought about Younghoe Koo for the last 5 years. I know a lot of people were freaking out in the preseason about him missing a couple of kicks and like, oh no, what's wrong with Younghoe Koo? And it was like, calm down, guys. Like, we have like 80 games of Younghoe Koo being lights out. He'll miss a kick occasionally, and everybody freaks out about it. And it's just like, calm down. He's fine. And I had no concerns with Younghoe Koo. My concerns, as I'm sure you guys expressed those, was, hey, Falcons, just get 5 yards and make this a 53-yard field goal that is well within his range, as opposed to making him have to kick a career long. But once the kick was up, it was like, okay, breathe a sigh of relief. It's on the line. So it was one of those things where it's like, no concerns about Younghoe Koo for me. My concerns about everything surrounding Younghoe Koo with the Atlanta Falcons. So yeah, Younghoe's been great. He's been lights out. Hopefully, we'll get like, how long did Matt Bryant play? Like 10 years in Atlanta, something like that. So, we got another like 5 years for Younghoe to really push that narrative. But certainly the Falcons kicking success in their lineage has been pretty good for these last few decades.
Yeah, no, got to give props where it's due. This team has figured out the kicking game and the punting game for the most part, outside of a couple of little periods of some issues. But we got Koo and Pinion locked up long term. Former Buccaneers punter Bradley Pinion here in Atlanta going to get another opportunity for revenge here.
We do well with former Bucs special teams players.
That's true. Yeah, we've been capitalizing on that. But yeah, on the Bucs side of things, the longest injury report in Week 5 that I think I've ever seen. I think there's like 15 Bucs on the injury report. Now there's only five Bucs have been ruled out for Week 5, plus the guys they have on injured reserve, including linebacker Servicia Dennis, who was really coming on for them this year, and he's been put on IR, so he's obviously out. Right tackle Luke Godicke, he's out, still having concussion symptoms multiple weeks after, so that's definitely a concerning thing, obviously, for him long term. Hopefully he's able to recover from that soon. Kalijah Cansey still has not played this year. He is also out, did not participate all week. Anton Winfield Jr. did actually get in a limited practice on Wednesday, but he has been ruled out as well. And then 2 receivers, Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer, the 2 guys that were rotating in and playing well for the Bucs. Palmer had a big touchdown last week, both out as well. So Bucs hurting here, and that's just the guys that are out. I mean, there's a ton of guys that are banged up, even if they will play. Yeah, I mean, Adnan, what do you think about this laundry list of Bucs injuries just 5 weeks into the season?
Man, sucks to suck.
Ooh, feels bad. Anyway.
yeah, gonna cry for them. It sucks. It obviously sucks for them, but they're navigating through it though, right? Like they're 3-1. The Buccaneers are playing some really, really good football right now. Arguably the best. No, I wouldn't even say arguably. I think they're playing the best football in the division coming into this week. So yeah, it's a laundry list of injuries. They have a lot going against them right now logistically. You mentioned it, Thursday night road game. They're coming off of a game against the Eagles, which they did handle, but still it's very physical whenever you're facing an Eagles team, just like how the Falcons are coming off of a very emotional win against the Saints, and there's some risk at a letdown there. But yeah, it's a lot of injuries. I'm not sad for them as a Falcons fan. Among those other 15 dudes, any more of them want to just take the take the night off and get 10 days of extra rest. Like, Mike Evans, you want to come back next week fully healthy, 100%. Like, there's no need for you to be out there on Thursday. I'd be all for that, but obviously it hasn't really impacted the win-loss record, and hopefully it does starting tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully the Falcons can take advantage. I mean, it's funny because the Broncos took advantage. Like, the Broncos just really went after this Bucs team and really, I mean, shut them down and made them look bad. And then, they go out there against the Eagles and just storm out to a huge lead and really just make the Eagles look silly. I know the Eagles are now down both Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Lane Johnson, they're really, like, the Eagles themselves. They've lost like the 3 of their top offensive players over the last couple of weeks since we played them. But, it still, I mean, impressive stuff to go and get that win. But yeah, I mean, this Bucs team has kind of defied the odds. I think they've been better than expected. We've gotten more good Baker than bad Baker. And so far, they've been able to overcome the limitations of their, the defense lost some depth over the offseason. They've lost a ton of depth since the season started due to injury. But yeah, I mean, Aaron, looking at this matchup and seeing all these injuries, I mean, do you think this is an opportunity now? Do you think the Falcons can be that team that really punishes the Bucs for all of the injuries they've suffered to this point?
Potentially, I think potentially, but as Adnan said, like, they've been dealing with a lot of these injuries all season long, and they've been able to navigate them. Most of the players that have missed this game were also missing last week's game, and obviously, as you just mentioned, Kevin, didn't really slow them down one bit against Philadelphia. Now, as you mentioned, we're hoping that the Falcons have maybe a little bit more firepower, especially with someone like Antoine Winfield out of the lineup. I've watched the last couple of Bucs games where there's been a couple of big runs that they've been able to give up because their safety play isn't quite as good, and those guys have been able to. Christian Izin has been outrun by angles from Saquon Barkley, so you're kind of hoping, hey, we can get a big run from Bijan or Tyler Allgeier in this game to take advantage of that. Again, a lot of the conversation is about Kyle Pitts and getting him going. We've been having that conversation the last 2 weeks, going up against both the Saints and Chiefs, teams that had struggled to cover tight ends. We didn't quite get Kyle Pitts going, but you're looking at some of these issues at the linebacker position, at the safety position, alongside Bijan Robinson and Tyler Allgeier. Like, hey, let's try to exploit those weaknesses, those absences this week. We'll see if the Falcons actually do that for the first time this year. But yeah, I think the Falcons certainly can have the firepower to take advantage of some of these matchups and make, the Bucs miss these players more than some of their recent opponents have been able to do. But, it just we'll just have to sort of wait and see if we can take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this Falcons team, this is the week that we really, I think, are going to need the offense more than any other week, because we've seen what Mike Evans and Chris Godwin going up against D. Alford that is playing probably the worst football of his career over the last 4 weeks. This Bucs team, I think, is going to be able to score points on the Falcons. Now, I don't think it's going to be like a 50 burger or something, but the Falcons have been able to get by with playing sort of ho-hum defense, but making the plays when they absolutely have to get it done. And we've really seen this offense struggle to finish drives and really even sustain drives. And that's also led to defensive problems, with this defense being out there for 10 plus minutes more than the offense every single week now. So, I think this is the week where we're going to have to see this offense take the next step. And I think with all the defensive injuries, a depleted Buccaneers defensive line, that they do have Villa back, that is a big thing. But like, even then, the depth is hurt. Like, all of these, I mean, Logan Hall and William Golston, like, all these guys were banged up and missing practices, and like, this Bucs defensive line is vulnerable. Their edge rushers haven't been good against the run, and really the Bucs pass rush, outside of last week where they really took advantage of the Eagles without their best offensive lineman in the game to get 6 sacks. Before that, the Bucs had only 2 sacks on the year. So, this is an opportunity, I think, for this Falcons offense to finally have the game that we've been hoping they would have, up to this point. I don't know if that means Kyle Pitts gets involved, like you were saying, Aaron. I mean, we're kind of all waiting for it. We'll talk about Pitts certainly a little bit later. I know that's like the topic du jour right now. But yeah, I mean, I think to me, like, this game is going to come down to the offense getting it together. October Kirk, notoriously better than September Kirk. So, I wonder if that's a thing. And obviously, like, just the month change, it doesn't change anything. But it is like you're 4 games in. Maybe you're finally getting more of a hang of things in this offense. But Adnan, I mean, what do you think? Do you think this is a potential spot where we see the offense actually deliver on what we would be expecting?
I mean, I hope so, and I think Drake London seems to think so. He was, I think, in a post-practice press conference, was it yesterday, said that this offense is really, really close. It's just very close to clicking, and we haven't really seen that so far. But the offense has the talent, and Zach Robinson so far has not really impressed 4 games in, but we're all giving him time. We have all said, it's first few games he's ever called, and he plays, of course, in Los Angeles. It was Sean McVay's role as the primary play caller, and just it feels like the feel of the offense just hasn't sort of been there when it does come to this play calling. Kyle Pitts has not really been there much at all outside of one play against Kansas City. The run game, there's a lot of outside zone plays run. There's a lot of screen passes, a lot of telegraphed run plays, and it sort of feels like there's really nowhere to go but up from here. And I think, and I really hope that as time goes along, this offense will be better and better, because obviously Kirk Cousins is healthier with each passing week. We can see it for ourselves. Every single week, Kirk Cousins, it looks like he can do a bit more than he could the previous week. Zach Robinson, with each passing game, naturally you're going to get more of a feel for it. And this will be a hell of a game for everything to click, because obviously, 1, it's in prime time, but 2, this is a huge divisional matchup in what's sort of a crossroads game. Because if the Falcons win, think of the difference in the vibes between a win and a loss. You win, you're 3-2, you're top of the division. You've played the toughest schedule in the NFL statistically so far. Statistically, you have the easiest schedule left, although most of that's going to be down the stretch. And, you feel good having just won back-to-back division games, and you're 3-0 in the NFC. You lose, you're 2-3. You are 2 games behind the Bucs. They already have the head-to-head tiebreaker. 4 out of your first 5 games were all home games, and you've only won 2 of them. And, it'll feel like for some people, it's the end of the world, right? I mean, that's what every loss feels like for some people. But this is, I don't really remember the last time there was this sort of crossroads for the Falcons where the discrepancy between a win and a loss was so great. Probably the last game they played against the Buccaneers, because that one more or less decided the division last year. And of course, the Falcons came up short there. But had they won that one, they probably would have won the NFC South. Arthur Smith probably doesn't get fired, and the entire makeup and complexion of this team's probably different. That's sort of a parallel universe type conversation. But yeah, I think the offense will look better this game than what we've seen at any point this season. But will it fully click, and will it be that the unit that's will it be the peak of the season with the unit? Probably not, but it will be really cool if it was.
Yeah, that would be nice. It would be nice to see. And Aaron, you mentioned it a minute ago. We see that the Bucs are down Anton Winfield. They're down Servicia Dennis. They've got KJ Britt in there, who thus far has been kind of a liability for them. It's a logical game for Kyle Pitts to have some production, but we haven't really seen, outside of a handful of plays, Kyle Pitts get targets and get big yardage. And I know, I was watching this game last week. I was kind of baffled by just how much short stuff. I mean, his route tree is almost entirely short stuff. There were a handful of deep shots, one of which he was wide open on. But, it's obviously not as simple as everyone makes it with Kyle Pitts. It's not just that he's a bust and he sucks. It's not just that, the offense is terrible or whatever. It's always somewhere in the middle, and it's obviously disappointing when you've invested as much in a player like that. And you're like, we've been having this conversation with Kyle Pitts, it seems like, for years. I wish the conversation would end and he would just reach his potential. But what do you think about that Kyle Pitts situation? Is this an opportunity for him to have that big game? Do you think it's on him, on the offense? I mean, where do you sort of stand on this whole great Pitts debate?
Yeah, well, I've been pushing it the last couple of weeks, and so third time's the charm, I guess, at this point in time. And I was joking the other day on Locked On Falcons that the last couple of weeks, like when I've done my all 22 reviews and given some suggestions to fix some problems, the Falcons have instituted those problems. So I'm of the belief that somebody in that building is an everydayer of the Locked On Falcons podcast. So, I think, if I can put it out there that, hey, this is the week to try to get Kyle Pitts going, I think, I feel a little bit better about the potential of that happening, because I think, somebody in that building is listening to the podcast. So, yeah, I think with Kyle Pitts, he did not play well against the Saints. I don't think it's as doom and gloom as some people will portray it based off of that one game. I think he's generally played well given what he's been asked to do in the first couple of games of the season. And, I think that will continue. I just wish that he would be asked to do a little bit more than what he has been asked to do at this point in time. And so that will lead to his success. But I think going back to what Adnan and you were talking about earlier, where, how close is this offense to clicking? You watch that Saints game, they had some big play opportunities to Kyle Pitts, to Darnell Mooney, that they didn't necessarily take advantage of early in the game. And then late in the game, they were probably doing a little too much big play hunting at the end of the game when they just needed 5 yards. But I feel like, you get a couple of those explosive plays, the offensive line holds up, Kirk makes a better throw, all that sort of stuff. Like, that's where this offense really starts to click. And if Kyle Pitts is just relegated to one 50-yard corner route a game, if that's going to be what his role is, and primarily the rest of it doing all the sort of underneath chipping stuff, the out routes, all the stuff that you've been talking about, Kevin, then so be it. Again, that wouldn't be necessarily the way that I would personally draw it up for Kyle Pitts. My expectations was kind of there would be a blend between him and Rayburn McLeod sort of filling the Cooper Kupp role out of the slot in this offense this year. That was my sort of expectation going into the season. We haven't really seen that, with him primarily being that more of that inline tight end. So we'll see if the Falcons can kind of implement some things. Again, the talking point that we'll continue to hammer is, this offense is still evolving, it's still growing, it's still learning, all those various things. So, I wouldn't necessarily, put the nail in the coffin at this point in time with what this offense looks like 4 games into the season and being like, this is what they're going to be. But these next, this game in the next couple of weeks, I think are really going to tell us whether or not this offense is going to be able to grow at the rate that we need it to in order for this team to kind of reach their goals. Because, they kind of, I've been talking about this on Locked On Falcons the last couple of weeks, which is like, their bye week is week 12. They kind of need to be like 6-5 going into that bye week. So at 2-2, you need to win at least 4 of your next 7 games. And as Adnan says, like, the really soft part of the schedule is really after the bye week, and you still have some really good teams that you got to face before the bye week. Dallas, Seattle, more divisional matchups. So, like, it's not going to be easy for this team to get there in terms of the schedule. And so in order to win those games, you do need your offense to start working a little bit more efficiently. And I don't think they're far from it, but you just kind of need that sense of urgency. And there's only maybe a couple more games before we can sit here and still be like, well, it's going to work this week. And, that clock is ticking basically. And so at some point, hopefully on Thursday, we'll see everything kind of clicking and fall into place.
Yeah, it's, and I think it's been more than just this week, but this week I was like, shout out to NFL Pro. It's really nice to be like, oh, show me all of Kyle Pitts, routes. And then it's like, oh, okay. Now I don't have to sort through like 35 plays to find these plays. So and also it works, unlike, the stuff, the Game Pass Plus last year, whatever the heck it was. So, shout out to NFL Pro for being a good product finally. But yeah, I mean, it seems like there's no creativity with Kyle Pitts' role whatsoever. He's basically a standard tight end doing standard tight end routes, and occasionally he'll line up in the slot. He's having a dalliance as a slot receiver, from time to time. But his slot snaps have been cut every week essentially, and they clearly love Ray McLeod, and maybe it's just that like Kirk loves Ray McLeod, and I mean Ray McLeod has played well, so it's not like I'm hating on Ray McLeod or his role, but Kyle Pitts is a tight end that you have to create a role for, and everyone involved with him should know that. It's like when they drafted him, they should have known that. Somehow Arthur Smith seemed surprised by that, and then it's also bizarre that you saw his role in his rookie season, and it was like, yeah, that's what you do. And then every year since, they've just like tried to make him more of a tight end. And it's like, no, when we saw how to use him, that's how you do it. And it's like every year we're like going back. Like we're like, no, he's really a tight end. Trust me, he can block every play. I know you're more, favorable to his blocking than I am. And I do think it's no longer like red flag, this is going to be a loss like every time he blocks. So he has taken steps forward in that area. It's just, it's frustrating usage. And I know, and fans are obviously going to be brutal when you're a top 5 pick and you're not getting a catch in a game. I mean, this is going to happen. But Adnan, I'm curious, what you think about the Kyle Pitts situation and the progression of the Falcons offense so far.
I mean, so far it is underwhelming. He is completely being underused, right? It's three targets last game. He has on the season 105 yards total. 50 of those came on one play against the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's, of course, it's not all Kyle Pitts. It's also the scheme, the game plan. Somewhat a little bit on Kirk Cousins as well for not getting him the ball either. But it's really disappointing because we're 4 years into the Kyle Pitts experiment. Not really experiment, but he was a top 5 pick. At this point, he should have been. When you invest that kind of draft capital in someone and when you pass on the players that you have passed to draft Kyle Pitts, because that was, bordering on an all-time type draft between picks 5 and 14, you expect that player to be, a focal point and one of the best at his position. He was the highest drafted tight end of all time at his position. And there have been many excuses over the past 2 years. And it feels like we're in the year where everything should finally be coming together for Pitts. He's a couple of years removed from his injury. He finally has a really good quarterback at the helm. Not Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder, arguably the worst quarterbacks of the last 2 years overall. And he has, that play caller who is more modern, more innovative. And it just feels like we're into year 3 now, and all we have instead of production is just more excuses. And it's just excuse after excuse. And I get the frustration with the fan base. I have a lot of frustration myself at this entire situation, but it's because you have not utilized and you have not gotten the return on a really, really expensive investment at this point. You got it in year 1 with Matt Ryan, and since then it's just been nothing. And it's not just everything around Kyle Pitts either. There were some routes, I was looking back at it last game, there were some routes where he just, sort of wasn't running maybe as hard as he should have. There was that one slant pass that came his way, which was broken up by Marshawn Lattimore, excuse me. But, we've seen that in the past, but also at the same time, he was open on a good number of plays where Kirk Cousins didn't look his way either. So it feels like a perfect storm of just everything coming together to make this as frustrating and as difficult as possible right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at. I think Kyle Pitts is frustrated with what's going on because this is exactly what happened with Arthur Smith, right? I mean, they weren't able to craft a role for him. And he's not a traditional tight end. He never has been. And it seems like every staff comes in and talks up how they want to get Kyle Pitts involved, but they're just not willing to create a role for him. They just want him to play Y, and it's like that's not who he is. And, it's still early in the season. And, I know people are like, oh, well, if he's that good, you shouldn't have to create a role for him. Like, you have to scheme your players up. Like, there's very few players that you just tell them to run a go route every play and they're going to be productive or something. Like, you can't just say like, oh, well, if he was elite, then he'd be just good no matter what. I mean, yeah, it helps when you're doing great work out there, but it's not that simple. And Kyle Pitts needs a receiving tight end role. He needs to be treated a certain way. And so far, the team has not been willing to do that. And if they're not willing to do that, I mean, they should just play Charlie Werner, because Werner's going to give you more as a blocker. And I think Werner's going to probably give you just as much in a lot of those short routes as Pitts will. Pitts has a bigger catch radius, but like his big defining trait is catch radius and long speed. And we've seen him destroy people with those traits over the years. That was his whole game in college. But the short routes, they just don't really let him take advantage of those traits. And, I mean, I guess maybe that means that he wasn't worth a top 5 pick if you have to create this like special role for him. And maybe that's true, but like you still should be creating a role for him, because he is a unique, dangerous weapon that could be a boost to many offenses. And I guarantee you, if the Falcons trade Pitts to someone that wants him and will actually create a role for him, he will look good. He will probably be a very good player, and the Falcons will look really, really stupid. And that's why I hope they don't do it and they get it together and figure it out. And also, it's like, it's 4 games into the season. We probably shouldn't be writing the book on what Kyle Pitts is 4 games into the season, because this is a brand new offense for everyone involved. Zach Robinson's been just trying to get his feet wet, and maybe creating a specialized role for his tight end that really is more of a slot receiver. Maybe that's not something he's been able to craft yet in the greater context of just trying to get this offense off the ground. And, I think that if that's the case, we just need to have patience, and we just need to get the offense right. I think maybe like whatever that takes. If that means that Charlie Werner needs to play more for the next little bit while they figure out how they want to use Pitts and incorporate him and get Kirk Cousins to actually look his way and throw him the ball, then that's okay. And if that makes people mad, so be it. But I think it's a complicated issue. I think it's really easy to just distill it to, well, Pitts sucks and he's a bust. Like, but that's not. I don't think that's the case. And I think if we were to see Pitts go elsewhere, people would be reminded real fast that that's not who he is. Now, there's a lot we still have to see from Pitts. I think this year is pretty critical for him, but, long way to go. And I would like to see more. But, on the topic more of this matchup, it does make sense for the Falcons to use Pitts and use his unique abilities in this game when he should have opportunities. But, the other side of it is, what can we expect from, the run game? Because last week, the run game with Tyler Allgeier was clicking. With Bijan, it was still good. I mean, a lot of people were like, oh, Bijan didn't play well. No, he played fine. He averaged over 4 yards a carry. Allgeier, I think, had the better blocking. But how critical do you think the run game in particular is in this matchup, Aaron, for trying to just to let the Falcons sustain some drives? Because that's been arguably their biggest issue on offense so far.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important. I think this offense through 4 games so far has shown that they're at their best when they can run the football effectively. We've seen that happen in the Eagles game. Less so. I mean, they were pretty effective early in the Steelers game. It felt like the Steelers kind of figured them out about midway through the game, basically with all the we talked about this a lot after the week one. My thing is like we're flushing the week one game down the drain. It's just like we won't consider
the strangest game I've ever like. The Falcons offense looks nothing like that. Like it's just like they just threw that game plan out there and we're like, we're just gonna throw that away and good because that was ugly. So
so we'll forget week one. And so you didn't have as much success against Kansas City. You had some success against the Saints, especially with a lot more inside running and whatnot, using more inside zone than necessarily the outside zone run scheme that has been their sort of hallmark so far this year. But I think going up against this Bucs team, again with Vita Vea in the middle, and that has been a consistent theme for this Falcons team over the years when they face this Bucs team, that like just running into the teeth of that deviant line has been a problem, especially with our undersized interior guys going up against the world's, basically the Titanic in the middle of that D line. And so like you're going to have to be able to attack on the edges to get this run game going. So I think it's going to be really important for the run game to get going for this offense and keep, Todd Bowles on his toes. Cause if the Bucs can get a lead in this game and Todd Bowles can start dialing up some of the pressures, that's not something that is well suited for this Falcons offense with a backup center, with Kirk Cousins and his mobility concerns. If Bijan Robinson, you're arguably your most dynamic weapon in your passing game, of when you talk about, hey, it's not just easy to just give the guy the football and then go make a play when it comes to scheme and stuff. Well, Bijan is good enough where it's just like give him the football and let him go make a play. But if he can't be that, because you have to keep him in on these 6 and 7 man protections to deal with the blitz, that's going to be a problem. So I think if the Falcons can get their run game going, establish the run, have a lead in all those various things, it will be greatly beneficial for this offense and not force them to play a style of offense I don't think they necessarily want to play against this Bucs defense.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's a big reason that the Eagles got clobbered in this one, is because they got, it was 21-0 before you could blink your eyes, and then they don't have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They have no way of climbing back into that game with the passing game. So, they sort of slowly did a couple things here and there, but yeah, that they were totally cooked. Now, this Falcons team is probably better equipped to get back into games because they actually do have some receivers now. What a treat that is. But I think, it's going to be better for everyone if Atlanta just gets to pound the rock and lean on that two-headed run game, because Allgeier's been playing great. I think every defense, you can tell defenses have been completely studying Bijan and focusing on stopping Bijan. So when Allgeier comes in, they're just not really prepared for his style, which is quite different. It's much more patient. It's much more physical, yards after catch yards after contact based. And Bijan's a good yards after contact runner too. It's just different yards after contact. It's more like I'm going to spin away from you and Allgeier's just going to run through you. So, I think the Falcons are going to use both running backs going forward. And that's good. I just think we haven't really seen the run game take over yet. And I wonder, with the Bucs depleted at linebacker, with, no Anton Winfield, with their defensive line outside of Vita Vea really struggling against the run, and the Bucs actually being a decent defense against the pass. Zion McCollum has been the biggest surprise, I think, of the whole season for them. PFF's number one corner out of nowhere. Maybe the Falcons do really lean on the run in this one. Adnan, what do you think about the strategy of just trying to start to try to take advantage of this depleted Bucs defense with the Falcons ground game?
I really like the strategy of leaning on your run game, sort of no matter what the scenario is, because that's the strength of Atlanta's team. The offensive line are better run blockers than they are pass protectors. We've known this for years. You have Bijan Robinson, whom you've made that top 10 investment in as well. Tyler Allgeier is one of, the better backup running backs in the NFL. And, this is an offense that just has not been able to sustain drives for the most part over the past few weeks. And that's been combined with the defense that hasn't been able to get off the field. And as a result, we have seen a massive time of possession discrepancy all season long for the Falcons. So, being able to effectively run the ball against your opponent will go a long way in mitigating some of that time of possession discrepancy, and it'll go a long way in if you can do it successfully, it'll go a long way of staying on schedule, because this team has been plagued on the early downs.
Yeah.
They have been in third and longs. They have been in third down and 6 or longer more times than I can count. And, if you can sort of make those 3rd and 6s, 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 2s, then we'll be cooking. But yeah, I saw a stat today, just talking about the Bijan and Allgeier thing. It's a really funny stat where Tyler Allgeier has gone up against, a loaded box only 3% of the time this season. And it just feels like opposing team, and this was clearly the case with the Saints, feels like opposing teams just don't expect the Falcons to run the ball when Tyler Allgeier is in the game, which is kind of like weird to me, because why not? And I think we saw it in game one. My mind is on the Braves right now.
Yeah.
The bases are loaded. There's nobody out. It's not good. But basically, we saw it in the Saints game, where it feels like the holes for Tyler Allgeier were just massive, whereas Bijan Robinson was sort of, he was still doing a good job, but it felt like it was a lot tighter whenever Bijan had the ball, and it feels like defenses are sort of locking in on the run game a lot more whenever Bijan's in there. So I guess if it keeps happening, you can maybe take advantage of it. But it's just been weird to me. Like, I don't get why teams don't prepare for the run as much when Tyler Allgeier is in there. But yeah, it's been a funny phenomenon. But definitely lean on the run game, and definitely try to sustain those drives a little bit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is like film study from last year, where Tyler Allgeier actually came on the field a lot on third down because of his pass blocking. And I wonder if teams like studied that on film and they're like, oh, well, if Tyler comes in, they're not running the ball because he's pass blocking. But it's actually Bijan's like actually become a great pass blocker, which is lovely to see. But it's funny. It's to see that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that, if teams are keying on one thing, then do something else, right? Go to your other guy. And Allgeier has obviously answered the call when the Falcons have needed it. That's great to see. I don't think this is some like, oh, Allgeier's better. I mean, if you watch like Allgeier is running very well. This is not taking anything away from him. He's been getting he got better blocking last week. Now that's not always the case, but like in this last game, Allgeier had some great holes to run through. Props to the Falcons offensive line. And that might have something to do with what you were saying, Adnan, that teams are more keyed in on the pass and less prepared to deal with him. But, I think that both guys are good, and we do need to see both. And, I'm just hoping that we see that run game diversity hasn't really come. I think we were hoping to see more like gap style runs and that sort of stuff in the middle that hasn't really materialized. So I'm hoping we'll see more of that as time goes on. But right now, I think, you've got these two good backs, and I'd lean on them, especially against a Bucs team that you don't want to have the ball for very long. You want to make sure Baker Mayfield can't get into a rhythm, because if good Baker shows up, you can see what happens, right? He diced up the Eagles' defense, which the Eagles' defense is quite possibly the most like either good or just awful defense in the NFL. Like, I feel like that defense has no in between. It's either like they shut down the Saints or they give up 21 points in the first quarter. Doesn't seem like there's anything in between for that Eagles defense. It's a very bizarre unit. But speaking of defense a bit, the Falcons defense so far has done enough. Right now, they're 14th in points allowed. Great. I think everyone on planet Earth that's affiliated with the Falcons would be very happy if the Falcons were the 14th best defense in the NFL. That's a good place for this Falcons defense to be. But, the advanced stats say that the Falcons defense has not been very good. So, is it sustainable? And I think they have gone up against some good opponents. So I don't think it's really that they've not been tested. It's just, is it sustainable? Aaron, what do you think going against this Bucs offense that lit the Eagles defense on fire last week? How do you feel about Atlanta's defense in this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge. I think the strength of the Bucs has always been their passing attack. Baker Mayfield looked really good. It was probably one of the best games I've seen from him in several years. Just watching the film, I know that the stats may not necessarily say that, but he looked very sharp and in command of that offense, and made some laser throws in that game to multiple receivers, and looks like a guy that's very comfortable in that offense, which is sort of contrasting with some of the things going on here in Atlanta with Kirk Cousins and Zach Robinson's offense. But, I think the challenge for the Falcons is going to be, those early down things, right? Where like teams are able to get into a lot of third and shorts against this team because they can just kind of run the ball pretty effectively on those early downs, stay on schedule, and they get into very makeable third downs. And when you have a pass rush that isn't great, I think they took strides against the Saints, but how much of that is the Saints were down 2 starters on their offensive line, and then 2 of their other starters, and Trevor Penning and Lucas Patrick, are probably replacement level starters at best. And so did they take advantage of a weak Saints offensive line? Again, you can say, hey, well, maybe they can take advantage of a weak Bucs offensive line down their right tackle, and having some inconsistent play on the interior with their 2 guards and Ben Bredesen and Cody Mauch, and then of course a rookie center in Graham Barton. So I think this game is going to kind of tell us whether or not this pass rush is for real or not, because it has been underwhelming through 4 games up to this point. I think 4 sacks for the season, only 1 last week, and that came from a cornerback. But I think the good thing that we saw last week against the Saints was that the Falcons were much more willing to blitz to sort of complement and supplement their ability to get pressure with 4 guys. So I think that's something that can be in their back pocket moving forward if they can't just get pressure with 4 guys. So I think with this defense, there's a lot of challenges for this defense heading into this game. We know AJ Terrell historically does not have the greatest games against Mike Evans. I looked up the stats earlier today. He usually is bad against Mike Evans in the first Falcons-Bucs game, and then really good against Mike Evans in the second Falcons game. So we just kind of need to flip that this year and have him. But I think the real other challenge in addition to that one is going to be Chris Godwin. He's now back in the slot, and D. Alford has been up and down this year. So I think there's a lot of challenges in the secondary. And so you can take a lot of pressure off that secondary, especially given how much off-zone coverage that they're going to play, and maybe concede a lot of those underneath throws, which we've seen teams like Kansas City take great advantage of. You need the guys up front to get that pressure. And so I think there's a lot of challenges for this defense, but I think they have enough that if those guys can play up to our expectations, they should be able to, keep this Bucs offense in check. And as you said, Kevin, if the offense comes to play, that will be a winnable game. But this Bucs offense, if they're firing on all cylinders, and if we get the quote unquote bad version of the Falcons offense or Falcons defense that can't stop the run, that can't rush the quarterback, and you get Chris Godwin going and you get Mike Evans going, as we've seen them get going in the past against this Falcons secondary, it could be a long night for this Falcons defense.
Yeah, it could be a tough one. I just feel trust for this Falcons defense that they've been really good at making adjustments. This defense, especially in the second half of games, has played really well. So we need to see obviously some changes. We've talked about the Falcons defensive line, particularly the interior, just really not living up to their billing. Now, David Onyemata over the last 2 weeks has started to play a lot better. So that's really encouraging. Grady Jarrett had that great week 1, been quiet ever since, so we could really use him. Jarrett, it's more understandable, right? He's coming back from a serious injury. Maybe he was just hopped up on adrenaline week 1 and just was so excited to get back out there. But other than, Onyemata, and honestly, Eddie Goldman has been the second best Falcons pass rusher. In terms of, what a world we live in, that Eddie Goldman is playing for the Falcons and being productive as a pass rusher. Wild times. But yeah, I mean, I think TQ, they're leaning more on Taquan Graham. I think that was a good move. He responded with a very good game. He was effective. I think they're starting to lean more on Zach Harrison. I think we need to see Zach Harrison somewhere. I think it was a mistake to make him convert to the inside. They're hurting so much at edge. I know he's not a stand-up rusher, but they just have nothing at edge outside of Matt Judon, and Ebikadi's been okay. Lorenzo Carter is just, he's having his worst NFL season. I feel like that he's just not really making a difference out there. we just need more. And we thought the interior would dominate and that would take pressure off the outside guys. It hasn't really been the case. So hoping that will improve. But Adnan, how are you feeling about this Falcons defense going into critical game against Tampa Bay?
I mean, we really need the pass rush to get home a little bit, because so far I've had no complaints about, not no complaints, but so far the overall performance of the defense has been, you know, even higher than my expectation coming into the season for them, because, you know, 14th, like I will sign up right now to finish 14th, you know, in scoring all season long. Coming into the year, I thought, you know, maybe if we can, you know, if we can get into the teens, that's going to be satisfactory. That's going to be enough. Obviously, the offense has also not played up to our lofty standards thus far, but I don't think it's going to be sustainable if the Falcons continue with this lack of pressure. We thought that the interior of the defensive line was going to be a major strength of this team. So far, it hasn't been. We knew what the edge was, and we knew that that was probably going to be carried by Matthew Judon. So far, it has. But nobody's really stepped up beyond Judon out of anyone on that edge group. And, you know, if the Falcons don't, you know, get better, get to the quarterback a bit more, it's not going to be sustainable. I feel like this defense will eventually crash back down to earth. Hopefully that doesn't happen and they do, you know, generate some more pressure. But you know, this Bucs team, Baker Mayfield's having a hell of a season. Like, you're going to have to, you know, put at least a little bit of heat on him, because right now he's second in the NFL in touchdown passes. But on the other end, he has had a proficiency in going down a little bit, because he's also fourth among all quarterbacks in sack percentage. So you can get to him. It is possible. They are without their starting right tackle. And so far, the Falcons, outside of, you know, the interior, outside of the edge and the defensive line, it's been really good. You know, the secondary has exceeded my expectations. Mike Hughes is having a hell of a season. The safety tandem is, as advertised, the best in the NFL. And right now, the Falcons lead the entire NFL in, you know, big play percentage allowed, which, you know, part of that is not it is the systematic the systematic defense, the systematic philosophy of not giving up big plays. As a result, teams are sort of hurting them a little bit over the middle, a little bit, you know, on that underneath stuff, and that is where part of that comes from, of the defense giving up a lot of time of possession. But you're not giving up the big plays. If you can get home to the quarterback a bit more, then, you know, you have exactly what you need. And, you know, hopefully we do see that, and hopefully it starts this week, because even against the Saints, one sack with them missing two of their interior offensive linemen, I was really hoping to see more against the Saints. And we definitely need to see more against the Bucs, because it's going to be a bit more unforgiving if you don't get any pressure on Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, it will be. They need to find a way to do that. And, you know, the interior, I think, is the key here. You know, obviously Ikic being out, there's an opportunity there for Matt Judon to take advantage. I hope that the Falcons will make sure he's on that matchup as much as possible. But, you know, they got to get more from this interior. We need guys to step up. You know, I think Goldman has pulled his weight. I think Onyemata is rounding into the form that we need him. And then, you know, Grady Jarrett, I'm still hopeful that he's going to bounce back and continue to have a good season. Taquan Graham, you know, look, I think that's your four guys that need to be dominating snaps right now, and we need to see Kentavious Street. Like, Kentavious Street and Taquan Graham have played the same amount of snaps. That needs to not be a thing. We need to see more TQ, less Street. more Goldman probably. Like why is Street taking nose tackle snaps away from Eddie Goldman? I mean, I don't like. I mean, I would have rather we had Zion Logan here, right? Who got poached by the Bills, by the way. Like, I would rather he be on the roster at this point than Kentavious Street if he's going to be playing nose tackle. Kentavious Street weighs 287 pounds. You can't play nose in the NFL that small. Like, I think even when like Grady was playing it back in his rookie season, Grady's 300 pounds. Like, you know, I mean, that's a light guy. And I know, you know, Rod in the chat was asking with the $2 donation. Thank you. It's like, the Falcons D-line seems really small. Like, are we the smallest? They're not the smallest. I mean, it is like when Eddie Goldman's out there, 332-pound nose tackle, they're not small. You know, Onyemata's 300, Grady Jarrett's 300, Taquan is pretty close to 300 as well, you know, and most of these guys are close to 300. They're not like this gigantic interior, but when they have a nose tackle out there, they're not like a small line. So, you know, that there's a lot that goes into it, but we just need that group to be pulling their weight, and we need to see some adjustments to the rotation. And, you know, I think obviously Zach Harrison has to play more. I mean, I think he's one of your best players. You need to find a way to get him out there, whether that's a big end or whatever. You know, I think that we should, you know, and to their credit, like we're seeing TQ a lot more over the last couple of weeks. I think TQ's snaps like doubled from week 3 to week 4. So that should continue. And we need Judon to like really start, you know, turning it up as a pass rusher. He hasn't been bad so far, but I don't think we've been getting like big games from him yet. Obviously, he's made some key plays. The batted pass that ended up in Troy Anderson's arms was huge. But yeah, edge, I don't know what we do at edge. I mean, and Aaron, I'm curious what you think. Like we've seen like, I don't know, James Smith-Williams, interestingly, kind of be like the guy that's been the most productive out there when he's played. But what do you think their best bet is right now opposite Judon? Do you think it sticking with Carter, more Ikic, you know, is it James Smith-Williams?
Yeah, it's been mostly Judon and Smith-Williams playing on the left side of the D-line or outside linebacker, and then it's been mostly Ikic and Carter splitting the right side snaps. So we've seen more in pass rushing situations of Judon and Ikic on the field at the same time. That seems to be getting better from a pass rush standpoint, but from a run defensive standpoint, you know, I think Ikic, after a very rough week 1, I think he's gotten better as a run defender, but you're never going to look at Arnold Ikic and say like, this is a great run defender. And so, you know, if that means more Lorenzo Carter, then so be it. If that means, you know, maybe mixing in maybe some more 4-3 looks as opposed to just strictly being the 3-4 team that they have been at this point in time. And does that involve having Zach Harrison play on the outside? Does that involve, you know, I think that would be a better fit for Kentavious Street if you're going to play him on the interior, where his strength is quickness and being that more of that penetrating, disruptive player. Same thing goes for Grady Jarrett. Those guys just kind of fit more of that style of defense rather than the sort of traditional 3-4 where you kind of want these guys to hold the point of attack and read the blocks and all that stuff. I don't know if the Falcons are really built to do that with their current personnel at this point in time. So, you know, I think maybe having a little bit more of a hybrid front would make sense a little bit to sort of beef up the run defense and get a little bit more size on the edge, or at least when you have guys on the interior, they can be a little bit more of a attacking unit as opposed to a, you know, read and react type of unit. So, you know, I don't necessarily know the answers to the Falcons run defense. They got to figure it out at some point in time. It's been a unit that has been very disappointing. They've made strides, but again, it's the same conversation we keep having with the Falcons. It's like, you know, they're showing progress, but you know, we just need that clock to tick a little bit faster and stop being the team that's showing progress and actually start being the team that's actually good. You know, that's what we're waiting for.
Yeah, and it's like I don't think anyone realized like just how important Nate Landman was to the Falcons' run defense, and you know, I do wonder like if we get Landman and Anderson back, you know, next week, like could that be like the switch that's like now we get Landman at inside linebacker to fill the run, Anderson gets to do his thing, which is maybe just to be the sort of free-flowing linebacker like we saw against the Saints. And then Ellis gets to play more edge, which I think when he's gone down to pass rush, he's actually been pretty effective in that role. And it seems like the Falcons were really wanting him to do that this year. And once again, he doesn't get to do it because of a linebacker injury. So I'm holding out hope that maybe like that, when Landman comes back, maybe we can get some better splits there, and Landman is just he's just such a good run defender that maybe that will help a lot. So maybe we kind of figure out the interior rotation. Maybe we get Rook in there and Rook can be, good or at least play. I don't care at this point. Just no slander to Kentavious Street. He was critical when the Falcons needed him last year to fill in for a couple games, and he was good this preseason. But we haven't seen anything from him this regular season. I don't understand. How are you keeping your second round pick on the bench for that? I can't. There's no more justification for that to me. We got to see Rook. That was the one thing Rook could do in college. He was a reliable run defender. He's got huge arms. He could just get in there and clog up the run. Did he know what he was doing as a pass rusher? Absolutely not. But sometimes he would just get sacks because he's just a crazy athlete and he would just end up in the backfield. So that at least we would have that, and at least we would have run defense, which we actually really need at this stage. So I think we need to see Rook. That's the end of my rant on that one. But I do want to shout out Noah C with the $5 donation saying, Noah C, also our moderator in the chat. Shout out to Noah. Noah says, also just realized I've been with you guys for 3 years now. Love all the work you guys are putting into the podcast. Found you guys pre-COVID. Keep it up. Thank you for your contributions as well, Noah. We appreciate you. Always great to have you guys here. Trevor Simpson, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is better than the Falcons. I don't know what you're talking about. You're like, oh, the Falcons are tied with the Steelers. The Falcons aren't tied with the Steelers in anything. I don't know what you're the Steelers are allowing 13 points per game. That's 10 points less than what the Falcons are allowing. They're not even on the same stratosphere as the Steelers defense. If you're honestly looking at the Steelers defense, just don't even look at stats. Just watch the Steelers defense play and then pop on the Falcons defense film. If you think those two defenses are in any way similar in terms of talent, in terms of play, you have no idea what you're watching. So I don't know what else to say to you. The Steelers are arguably the best defense in the NFL. The Falcons are playing effective football, and it's kind of ugly. It has been effective, so props to them. But I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, man. They're not. I don't know what stat you're quoting, saying they're tied with the Steelers. Are they tied with the Steelers in vibes? Because the Steelers' vibes aren't very good, so I'll give you that. But I mean, I don't know what to say. Please show me the stat that they're tied in, and if it's just yards per carry on third down, that does not count. That's too niche for this thing. So, but yeah, thank you for watching though, and thank you for all the comments. We do appreciate that. But critical game here. Obviously, if the Falcons win this game, it's a big one. And they really set themselves up to take control of this division with, the Panthers coming to town, or the Panthers up next. That another opportunity to get to 3-0 start just 6 weeks into the season. It's big. But yeah, Adnan, what do you think? What's your prediction for this Week 5 clash with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I feel like this has the makings of being a very chaotic. I mean, it's a division game, right?
Thursday night football. Yeah.
You're combining a lot of different wild factors in this. It's a Thursday night. The Falcons are coming off of a highly emotional victory. The Bucs are going on the road, and whenever these two teams come together, it's just always close. No matter what, even it transcends the years, right? Even back when the Bucs were awful, when Raheem Morris was their head coach with Josh Freeman, they still gave the Falcons a run for their money when the Falcons had Matt Ryan and were winning 13 games. When the Bucs had Tom Brady, they were beating the Falcons, but it wasn't by much. And I think this one is going to come down to the wire. And I think the Falcons defense will make enough plays in the secondary, and their offense will figure it out a little bit more than what we've seen so far, and behind a really strong run game. I think the Falcons will edge it out. I think I made my prediction in our Falcoholic roundtable. I think I said 27-24. And I'm with it. I'm with that one. Last minute field goal by Younghoe Koo again. Let's make it back-to-back games. Let's let's continue the legend of Younghoe Koo. But yeah, this Bucs defense, I know it's not the exact same defense, but the on the Bucs side, I feel like the Bucs defense last year was maybe even a little better. Um, and the Falcons last year moved the ball at will against them in both games, and that was with Desmond Ridder at quarterback in both games. It's just the Falcons completely shot themselves in the foot over and over again in both of those games, but they should have won that absolutely handily. They should have won both matchups handily. Instead, they almost lost both. They split it. And I think the Falcons offense will be able to move the ball against this Bucs defense again this year. And yeah, I'm going home win, and I think the vibes are going to be immaculate in the city after this one because they really have been. Like after that Eagles game, this city was on fire for the Falcons. And this city is just waiting for the Falcons to be good again. Like, it's been so long. Like Atlanta is such a football town. Like no disrespect to the Braves, to the Hawks, but like the center, like Atlanta, that this is a Falcons place, and they cannot wait for this team to be good. And you know, 3-2, like what we're cooking, with grease, especially because Brave season is going to be over. They're down 5-1 at this point.
Yeah, no, I was looking at that. Yeah, sorry about that, Adnan, but appreciate you, toughing through that analysis while watching those two hits go down. But yeah, critical game. It's this is an important one for Atlanta, in terms of standings, in terms of all this stuff, but like mentally too. Like, and honestly, the Bucs are in the same situation. Like I was talking to the guys from the Cannon Fire podcast today, and they were saying, every time the Bucs get to this type of game where they're like, we could take control of this division, we could really come out to a lead, because the Bucs were honestly in the same situation as Atlanta last year. They just never were really able to get out to any sort of lead, and it came down to the last week before they were in the playoffs. They just blow it, when they get to these games. And I was like, well, the Falcons feel very similar. Every time it feels like they can take control, they can sort of set themselves up and start stringing some wins together. They never did it under Arthur Smith, not once. So, this is like the curse bowl or something, where these two teams are both coming into this game with an opportunity to take control. One of them's going to do it and one of them's not. But yeah, I mean, I do ultimately think that the Falcons manage it. I guess my hope is that the Falcons offense comes alive in this one and finally starts putting some points on the board. I think they were closer than people think to actually to scoring last week. There's a lot of close calls. That Bijan screen being taken off the board by that holding call was, I just see when I think about it, like, I just can't believe they called that holding and not everything else in that game. Like, the Falcons should have had that touchdown for sure. But, I think this could be the week that they do finally get it together on offense. And I think they'll need to, because I think the Bucs are going to score. I think the defense is not going to be able to hold the Bucs under 20 points or anything like that. So the Falcons offense is going to have to put points on the board. They're probably not getting 14 points from a botched punt and a, pick six again in this one. So they're going to have to score more on offense. And I think that they do it. Again, Thursday night road games are very unkind. But it's going to be a sweaty one. I feel like this team at this stage is not capable of playing any other type of game. But what do you think about this one, Aaron?
Yeah, pretty much every prediction, I'm like, it's going to be a one-score game in the final 5 minutes, and whoever makes the most plays in those last 5 minutes is going to be the team that wins the game. Always have your blood pressure and heart medicine on hand to watch the Falcons, because I hope we get there one day this season where we can feel like, yeah, they can blow out this other team, but I don't think they're quite there yet. So hopefully we'll get there. For me, going into this, sort of predicting the outcome of this game, like, because I think the Bucs have played better football than the Falcons over the first 4 weeks of the season, if this was a Sunday game, I would have no qualms picking the Bucs to win that sort of one-score game, given some of the things that Adnan said, Falcons coming off that emotional win against the Saints and maybe due for a little bit of a letdown. But because it's a Thursday night, and I always seem to get the Thursday night predictions wrong, so again, take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. just as good a chance the Falcons come out here and blow the Bucs out or something like that. And so like you always get weird outcomes on Thursday night. And so because the Falcons are the quote unquote worst team playing at home, and it'll be a weird Thursday night game where it'll be like a muff punt or something like that. Or no, we got all the muff punts out of the way last week. There was like 5 of them last week. But it'll be some weird thing that will happen in this game. It'll go to overtime. It'll be a tie. I don't know. Something weird is going to happen on Thursday night. And so in a weird game, like I feel like the Falcons will find some weird way to win this football game, and it'll be like a weird score, like 26-22 or something like that. Just a weird wonky game, and it'll be frustrating to watch, but maybe the Falcons come away with a win. And as Adnan said, like the vibes will be great in the city. 3-2, 2-0 in the division, looking like they got a chance to go 3-0 in the division against Carolina. And then of course they'll let us down and lose to Andy freaking Dalton or something like that. But like we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But yeah, I think if the Falcons can come away with a weird wonky win on Thursday Night Football against the Bucs, I think that's very doable at this point in time. So, I don't have a good feel for this game for that reason. In previous years under Arthur Smith, it was always like anytime I didn't have a good feel for the game, the Falcons would lose that game every time. And like I didn't have a great feel for the Saints game. And I was just like, I don't know. It could go either way. I really don't have a good idea. It's a divisional game. It'll be close. And they won that game. So I'm feeling like, hey, let's keep the vibes going and don't have a great feel for this. It could go either way. Who knows? They'll beat the Bucs. They'll be 2-0 in the division, and all that Arthur Smith drama of never being able to win the games when they needed to win the games is a thing of the past. So hope springs eternal at this point in time, and then I'll be pulling out the remainder of my hair on Thursday night if they wind up disappointing me. But yeah, it's part of being a Falcon fan, so I'm used to it.
Yeah, par for the course. But yeah, it's gonna be like a weird thing, like Baker goes just escapes and starts running downfield and then fumbles or something, and then it's returned for a touchdown. The Falcons win. And it's oh, Baker's gonna win it on this 20-yard scamper. Oh, he just fumbled. Oh no! And then it's it's gonna be some bizarre outcome. But yeah, and a lot of it's going to be does good Baker or bad Baker show up? If good Baker shows up, it's going to be a shootout. If bad Baker shows up, it's probably going to look like the rest of the Falcons games they played this year, where they're just hoping to hold on defense and do enough on offense to win. So we'll see. But yeah, I do think the Bucs have played better than the Falcons thus far. But this game it doesn't matter who's looked better. It matters who wins the games. So again, the Bucs were clearly the better team last year, and the Falcons look like they should have beat them both weeks, to be honest. So, it doesn't always matter in division games. So we'll see, but certainly hopeful that the Falcons can pull this off, get the big dub, and take control of this division. Because after this, it's the Panthers. It would be really fitting if the Falcons beat the Saints and the Bucs and then lose to the Panthers. It's just I feel like that's what we're if they win this game, it's we're setting up for that. Just completely terrible timeline, but at least it would be to Andy Dalton now, who looks just it's kind of crazy just how much more functional the Panthers are with Andy Dalton and not their number 1 overall pick Bryce Young. That's just one of the weirdest things in the National Football League, is how bad Bryce Young is and how bad that organization is. But yeah,
as a Deontay Johnson fantasy owner in my home league, keep Bryce Young off the field.
Big fan of that. Big fan of that, for sure.
I did not start Deontay Johnson in the first Andy Dalton game, and I'm kicking myself.
Yeah, so I didn't either, but I kept him on my bench. I was like, I feel like there's a chance. I was about to cut him, and then they said Andy Dalton's the starter. I was like, okay, they're telling me there's a chance, and I'm glad I kept him. So, at least I have one functional player on that fantasy team. But
the Falcons also would move to 3-0 in the conference. With the win tonight, with a chance to go 4-0 in the NFC, with in theory a layup against the Panthers. Falco, I know we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Falcons, for the love of God, please don't lose to the Panthers.
Don't tempt fate, Adnan. Don't tempt fate. You're gonna get so excited about this Bucs win. You're gonna get 10 days off. Oh, they're gonna be so ready. And then
we'll be hyped. We'll be buzzed for 10 days. Oh yeah. My issue is I'm worried the players are also going to be buzzed for 10 days. And it's going to be it's the Panthers, Just chalk that one up.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Raiders felt the same thing, though. And then the Panthers went out and plastered them. But
yeah,
it's the conference record, the division record. Those are two huge tiebreakers late in the season, and these are the games where we'll be looking back at the end of the season and we'll be like, man, we're really happy we won those NFC games early on in the season, or we'll be like, man, that was a hell of a missed opportunity. So let's go out there tomorrow and let's win third primetime game in the first 5 weeks too.
hey,
so
let's do it.
not Sunday game so far.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I hope they can pull it off. It certainly would make for more entertaining 10 days and really set us up for even more disappointment by losing to the Panthers. But yeah, no, I honestly think it's better that Andy Dalton got inserted 2 weeks ago. And the Falcons will have 3 games of tape on the Andy Dalton Panthers offense instead of 0. If they'd had I feel like whoever was getting, Andy Dalton in that first week was going to get shredded just because that's just what he does. But we all know what happens as the season goes on. He's a mortal man. He's just Andy Dalton. So he can't hurt you that badly, only a little bit. So, if the Falcons, as long as the Falcons offense can pull their weight, we don't have to worry about Andy Dalton. But, that is yet to be seen. That's TBD. So, let's get through this Bucs game with a big dub and avoid any more injuries, and then we'll move on to talking about the layup Panthers game. Adnan's words,
No. Don't. God damn it! I did use the word layup.
Adnan's words, yeah.
No. I said in theory. I said
in theory. He did. It was couched. But yeah. No, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on the Falcoholic Live. I want to thank, of course, our guest, Aaron Freeman. He's at Locked On Falcons. Aaron, anything you'd like to plug before we sign off tonight?
No, got a preview of tomorrow night's matchup on Locked On Falcons ready to go. And then obviously we'll be reacting to it, tomorrow night, 1 a.m. or whatever, whenever the game's in for these primetime games. And so, hopefully we'll have, we'll be talking about how Kirktober, started off strong, or, did it fizzle? So that will be what's in store for you on Locked On Falcons.
Yep. I hope it's spooky season for the Falcons' opponents, not for Kirk Cousins. But so Kirk Cousins historically very good in October. So maybe that's what we have to hang our hat on.
Better in November. So
if we just gotta climb the ladder, we gotta climb the ladder. So fingers crossed. But yeah, Adnan. Thanks to my co-host Adnan Ikic. He's at Say Which Way. Sorry about the Braves game, Adnan. But anything else that you want to add before we sign off tonight?
I turned the Braves off. Yeah. What if we win or lose? We'll go tomorrow morning. I will submit that after the show for review to Dave. But yeah, I will be at the game tomorrow too. So I will be, credentialed. I will be in the press box. So I'm really looking forward to that, and yeah, I'm looking forward to bringing some real-time coverage tomorrow. I will try to go there right after my actual job, and so that I can be there for the Matt Ryan press conference, which starts a little earlier. And yeah, Falcons, please don't lose in front of Matt Ryan tomorrow. I just remember that they are inducting him into the Ring of Honor, which is very, very deserving. The greatest Atlanta Falcon of all time, in my opinion, and in many people's opinions. So, yeah, don't embarrass yourselves in front of Matt Ryan.
Yeah, please don't embarrass yourselves in front of Matt Ryan. I know we spoiled Travis Kelce, or not Jason Kelce's, return to Philly, and we spoiled all the glazing that he got, and that the Eagles got on that broadcast. That was glorious. Let's just not let that happen to Atlanta. And we're also not going to get that treatment either. I'm sure that the broadcast will be extremely, professional and not give the Falcons any preferential treatment whatsoever. But, to get this done.
Did you guys watch the Manning cast? So I went back and saw I was watching the real broadcast, the ESPN broadcast, and then later on, I saw a video of the Manning cast, and Matt Ryan was on there with Peyton and Eli Manning for that final 2-minute drill, and you can tell, he just seemed giddy. Matt Ryan was trying to be professional, and Matt Ryan is the consummate professional, and now he's in the media. But it was like it was infectious through the screen that he was just so giddy at the Falcons, like, going downfield. And he had this wry smile on his face after Saquon Barkley dropped the ball. And it was actually just really cool to see, because Matt Ryan was just like, you can tell that he's become one of us at this point. He's become one of the diehard Falcons fans. And you can tell it's difficult for him not to have a say anymore, not to be able to have a direct impact. But it's been really cool to sort of see Matt Ryan, now the Falcons fan, after seeing Matt Ryan, the Falcon, for so many years.
Yep. Yeah. That was a cool broadcast. I enjoyed. It's like the second Saquon dropped the ball, Matt Ryan was like, "Uh-oh," with like a giant smile on his face.
Yeah, he was trying to pretend. He was trying to pretend that he was like upset that Saquon Barkley. He was like, "Oh no!" But you could tell it was that fake. Oh no! It was like, "Oh no!" Like
Oopsie.
That's a crazy thing that happened. Oh no! Saquon dropped the ball. It was one of those moments.
Yeah. That was a good broadcast. I love Matt Ryan on the media. He's fun. Definitely has got a future there. So hope for more happy Matt Ryan takes as the year goes on. And obviously looking forward to seeing him back in the stadium on Thursday. But guys, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Kevin out of Falcoholic. Kevin, we got one last question from Corey, and it's for Adnan. He's asking, Adnan, how do you feel about our dogs?
Much better than I was feeling at halftime of that last game, that's for sure. I was like, God damn, bro, that Alabama monkey's never coming off the back. But now it's like, I'm not going to lie to you. The 12-team playoff sort of waters down the regular season in college football, to where now it's like, okay, you lost one. It's not a catastrophe, especially when you don't fully embarrass yourself. But it would have been different had the Dogs lost by like 30 and had that second half played out the way that first half played out. Then it would be like, okay, season's over. But right now, they'll get it together. There's still some time. There's some time before the playoffs.
Yeah. Nope. Good analysis there. Good stuff. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Please like, subscribe, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Check out the channel memberships here if you want to support the show. Really appreciate everyone hanging out with us. Critical game on Thursday, and then we got a nice rest before next week's game against the Panthers, which very important, even if the Panthers don't look all that threatening. It is a division game. It is really important, so got to get that dub. Got to collect on that. So, yeah, lots happening, lots going on. We will be back, of course, tomorrow night after the game. Adnan will be at the stadium, so he will not be here, but I will be joined by Trayshawn Diaz to recap that game on the post-game show, so you can join us for that. We'll continue on our coverage from there, hopefully in a positive manner, but, we're always ready for the Falcons to disappoint us at any moment. That is the one thing we're probably the most prepared for. So no matter what, we'll be ready. So.
Yeah, Falcons, don't embarrass yourselves in front of me either.
Yeah, no, Adnan's going to be there. They need to be on their best behavior. It's really not Matt Ryan. It's Adnan that they need to play well for. Yeah.
It's like, at least when the team loses and I'm watching on TV, it's like, okay, that sucks. You turn off the TV. You get on the post game and then you vent. The stadium's far. Like it's a long drive home from the stadium.
Yep.
It's a lot to dwell on in silence.
Yeah, it is. That's a tough spot. So, Falcons, just do Adnan a solid. If anything, do it for Adnan. Not for Matt Ryan.
Please.
He's got enough going on. Matt Ryan's had enough good things happen to him. It's really about Adnan on Thursday night. So, thanks guys so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the Falcoholic Live. Thanks to Aaron. Thanks to Adnan for coming on and helping out tonight.